Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Saturday, January 6th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game is in 238 days. The game against Michigan in 329 days. When that Akron game happens, when that Michigan game happens, a couple more Buckeyes have now said they will be there. That's where it's the topic of today's show. A couple big returns on the Ohio State defense, which is starting to sort of look like it might be pretty darn good in 2024 as well. Speaking of returns, our good buddy Tony Gerdeman, back from his long assignment in, I believe it was darkest Peru. I'm not sure. Maybe he just got his hand stuck in a marmalade jar. I don't know. Tony, first of all, welcome back. So good to see you once again.
Thank you, Tom. It's not a marmalade jar. It was a soda machine. And turns out all I had to do was let go of the can, and then I was freed.
Well, what a miraculous escape to start 2024. So glad you could make it and are no longer stuck with something sugary attached to you. Let's talk. The Buckeye fans probably also happy to see some other folks coming back in 2024 as well. Let's start. Two big announcements on Friday afternoon. Let's start with the first one. Safety Lathan Ransom. The last time we saw him was at Wisconsin, on the field of Wisconsin on Halloween weekend. Injured his foot, missed the rest of the season. He was someone who I don't know if he was quite as appreciated as he should have been by Ohio State fans at the time he left with that injury, with that foot injury at the Wisconsin game. But I think by the time he got to the Michigan game and then the Missouri game, I think people maybe sort of got a better appreciation for just how important Lathan Ransom was to that Ohio State defense this year.
Yeah, missing the last 5 games there, and there were 2 losses in those 5 games. And was solid against the run, solid against the pass as the boundary safety, as the bandit in there, and was also just a calming influence for the secondary as a whole. And when you look at the games that he missed, for instance, the first game he missed was Rutgers, and Ohio State gave up 230 yards rushing in that game, and 156 against Michigan, 203 against Missouri. Like, those are 3 of the 4 biggest numbers of the year, and it's not a coincidence that Lathan Ransom wasn't there. Very solid run defender, and we've seen obviously what he can do all over the secondary. So a huge miss for the final month plus of the season, but also a huge bonus to get back for next season. It creates some depth and creates some questions about what's going to happen with Sonny Styles and how that's all going to progress, but certainly creates more good problems than bad problems. I know the staff is thrilled to have him back. Jim Knowles, Ryan Day have always just been glowingly talking about Lathan Ransom whenever they get an opportunity.
Yeah, it's like the old thing that the Chinese character for crisis is the same as the one for opportunity. This is maybe the character for excitement is the same as the character for opportunity, because I'm sure they're very excited, but also, yes, he fills that bandit position, that boundary safety spot, and that's where he was all year and played very, very well all year. It also frees up, as you said, Sonny Styles, who was playing, I think, a little bit out of position towards the end of the year, and now you can move him back to maybe a little closer to the line of scrimmage where he probably should be playing next year, probably will be playing next year, whether that's at linebacker. We've even seen some suggestion that maybe you rush him off the edge at times. Whatever it is, this is one of these things where getting Lathan Ransom back for 2024 very well might make the Buckeyes better, not just at one position, but at 2.
Yeah, and it gets everybody more towards maybe their final destination of NFL positions as well. As you mentioned, Sonny Styles playing linebacker, losing Steel Chambers, losing Tommy Eichenberg. I'm not expecting Sonny Styles to be the middle linebacker, but at this point, there's nothing that I've seen that says he couldn't be the will linebacker in this defense. Got to be somewhere in there closer to the line. I think Jordan Hancock has shown that he doesn't need to be moving from his nickel spot. He's really, really good there, unless they see something there where they still do need to replace Josh Proctor. So what happens there? And does Lathan Ransom become the free safety? So it creates some questions, but at least they have some answers for what those questions are, and they've got plenty of time to figure all of this out. Lathan Ransom has played free safety, he's played strong safety, he's played nickel in his time at Ohio State in his previous 4 years, so wherever he is asked to play, he should hold up just fine, but he really found a home at that bandit spot this year.
And there are several moving pieces in that puzzle that we still have not heard from. Denzel Burke, Jordan Hancock, those guys have not officially announced their returns for 2024. They could theoretically declare for the draft. Talking to Burke at the Cotton Bowl, it felt like he was sort of leaning towards returning. Sort of get the same sensor on Hancock right now, but that's all still officially to be determined, so that I'm sure will be a future show in the next few days. One guy whose fate has been decided is Jack Sawyer. He is also coming back. He's someone, Tony, who I think there was someone on the sideline who I was talking to who said the Cotton Bowl was basically the worst case scenario for Ohio State, where they lost, but also all these guys on defense, no one more than Jack Sawyer, looked just fantastic. Really looked like, oh boy, they may be moving up draft boards with this performance. And Jack Sawyer, 3 sacks. I think it was an OSU Bowl record, 3 sacks in a single game. And I think everyone sort of assumed before the game he was coming back. Had that great game. He certainly gave the sort of unfinished business speech during the post game, so that sort of led you to believe this was going to happen as well. But unquestionably, this is a very, very big piece back on that defensive front for Jim Knowles.
Yeah, talking with Jack Sawyer before the game and even in the weeks leading up to the game, it sure sounded like he was coming back. He obviously hadn't made a decision or announced a decision. I think I remember tweeting after about sack number 2 that Ohio State better bench him or else they're going to lose him to the NFL because he was playing that well. But yeah, 3 sacks now, 3 tackles for loss, 4 total tackles over the last 3 games of the regular, or over his last 3 games this season, 7.5 tackles for loss, 6 sacks or 5 sacks in there. So, had a sack in his last 3 or 4 games, was just really productive. And, I wonder, was that more of just finally letting him loose, or was this a matchup situation where he just had some natural matchups that suited him well? But getting him back, seeing what he can finally do when he's essentially unleashed, this is obviously a significant return for Ohio State's defense and for continuing to build that pass rush and marrying the defensive line with the rest of the defense and just creating the havoc that the back end of the defense loves to capitalize on.
Well, we ran through some of the guys in the back end of the defense whose status was still up in the air and who was going to be back. This is now 2 of the 4 members of the 2021 Ohio State defensive line recruiting class, one of the best position group recruiting classes in history. 2 of them have already said they're back. Tyleik Williams, yesterday or the day before, said he was coming back. Now Jack Sawyer. Mike Hall is gone. He is headed off to the NFL. But man, if they can end up bringing back JT Tuimoloau as well, and you get 3 of those defensive linemen together, yeah, you got to replace a couple linebackers. But if they could get those 2 back, you get the other 2 corners back that we talked about earlier in Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock. Boy, oh boy, as good as the Ohio State defense was in 2023, it might be better in 2024.
Yeah, the good news is they have pieces in place for the guys that they're leaving, that they would be losing. Even Mike Hall, they have Ty Hamilton there. They've got a bunch of young defensive tackles that they can plug in there. Getting Tyleik Williams back obviously solidifies that group as well. And even keeping their corners, they still have more corners waiting in the wings. So it'll be interesting to see what they do to get all of those guys involved. Is there any movement there? And, Malik Hartford at safety is now his time. Is it his time to become that free safety to take over for Josh Proctor? So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. And also at this point, as we're talking, not losing any more guys from the defensive line into the portal, I think is significant. Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, not that, we're pushing anybody out, but this day and age, you can lose anybody at any time. And if they're able to get through this window, and there may still be some stragglers as the paperwork takes a little bit longer, we should know probably certainly by Monday. I mean, I assume at this point everything seems closed, but sometimes it can take a couple of days for things to process. But if they don't lose anybody else and they're able to bring guys in, I think you look at this defense next year as one of the best in the country. Yeah,
it certainly seems like it's trending that way. And speaking of trends, for the third straight year. This is, I mean, there's a lot of weird records being set right now, but this is maybe the weirdest one so far. For the third straight year, Ohio State has lost a cornerback in the transfer portal to LSU. First, it was Sevyn Banks in 2021. Then it was J.K. Johnson after 2022. Then now Jair Brown, who was an Ohio native who went down to play high school in Louisiana, then came back up to play high school in Cincinnati. He started his college career at Ohio State. Now he's going back to LSU. It's like Ohio State's AAA team or something. It's very, very weird that the same position group keeps ending up at LSU. So one little note there. And finally, we were talking right before we started recording. I don't know if this is technically news, but Matt Jones is not going to be back. I don't think Matt Jones could have come back, but he came back for this 2023 season, which was his 6th season in college. He has declared for the NFL draft. So I guess, Tony, now really the drama on the offensive line, there's kind of two-way drama. Number one, what's Donovan Jackson going to do? That's sort of the open question right now. And then they've brought in a couple guys, potential transfers on the offensive line. So just, it seems like an area where there's probably going to be some movement, but we don't know exactly what that movement's going to be and how many people are going to be going in each direction yet. But it feels like that of all of the units on Ohio State's team, that might be the most active in the portal, one way or the other this offseason.
Yeah, and in terms of saying goodbye to Matt Jones, we all know he's a car buff, he's a mechanic, and you never want to say goodbye to those guys. You want to keep those guys around as long as you can. Everybody, it's the most valuable friend you can have is somebody who knows about cars. And so obviously they're going to be sad to see him go, but waiting for Donovan Jackson to make his announcement. I would expect him back. I don't think anybody has played so well that they couldn't use more time at Ohio State. And also nobody played so well that you don't need to bring in some competition from the portal. And obviously they've recruited well. They've got some good guys coming in, but the more guys you can bring in to elevate the rest of the room, always go back to Jonah Jackson as being the epitome of that, where they felt like they had a good group coming in. And then you bring him in I think May or June, and he elevated everybody. Same with Josh Simmons last year. Vic Cutler didn't work out, but depth helps. And so if you can bring in whoever, maybe Carson Hinsman played better because Victor Cutler was around, that sort of thing where everybody's going to help raise the floor of this offensive line. So I know people will be looking like, oh, I don't want that guy. He couldn't snap at Alabama. Why do you want him? Why do you want him? Like at this point, you bring in as many guys as you can to make your room have a better you have a better opportunity to find your best five and find a better five than you had this past season.
Stack those chips up and see, let it sort itself out during the course of the spring and the summer. That feels like what Ohio State might be thinking here, because I don't think anyone's coming in with a guarantee of a starting job, but you have a chance to come in and compete for a starting job. Feels like that's sort of where things are with the quarterback room, as we talked about on the Will Howard commitment show. Going to be a lot of interesting position races this spring and this summer as the Buckeyes try and sort out a new season, new year, new Buckeye football program, as the Buckeyes try and get back to the hitting their annual goals, beating Michigan, winning the Big Ten, maybe even winning a national championship. Tony, we'll see if they can do all of that. Going to be a plenty of drama between here and the start of the season, plenty of drama between here and the end of the season. And the best place to follow all of it is at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Fantastic team of insiders covering the team, covering recruiting, covering X's and O's. You can find us also at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Lots of coverage from the All-American game this week. Mark and Kevin down there turning some great interviews, great insight, great analysis. 5-star cornerback Devin Sanchez announcing his decision on Saturday. Those guys talked to him earlier in the week. There's going to be a lot of interesting stuff coming out of San Antonio there. Plenty of Buckeyes playing in that game as well. We're going to get Mark on either Sunday's show or early next week to talk about the game and all the stuff that he saw there. So plenty of interesting stuff coming up this week at Buckeye Huddle and at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.